So I'm going to start by putting these glasses on, and I'm going to record the first few minutes of this because a lot of people ask me what it's like to present. So I'm going to show them. So if you're not supposed to be here, cover your face or hide under the table. I think that's supposed to record in a second. I'm also measuring my heart rate because I thought that would be interesting as well for people to see. So mm, I'm Gallagher. I am the CEO and founder of iovox. I am an engineer by trade, so very interested in everything AI at the moment. And I'm starting to record now. So what do we do? So we really have sort of three pillars of our business. The first pillar is capturing data. So that involves us capturing SMSs, phone calls, emails, chats, whatever, and gathering that data together. And that leads us on to the second point, which is to analyze that data. So we're going into details about what we do there. But that's gathering this very large amount of data. We have over 1 billion phone calls, for example. So analyzing that data is very difficult when it's on such a large scale. And then the third thing we're doing, which is an increasingly growing part of our business, is to automate what you actually do to solve the problems that we identified in the second pillar there. So what do we mean by analyzing data? So we have models. We have our own trained real estate models, which are trained on our data. We have PII models because we found that off the shelf PII models aren't actually that accurate. And we operate in multiple languages. And we really break it down into two different things or two buckets. One is microdata. So what happens in a single transaction? I'm going to focus on calls for most of this presentation, but what happens in that call? So was it answered? Who answered it? Did they answer professionally? Was there a booking of some sort made, whether that's with a broker, a viewing, or whatever? And this is where we trigger events. So we have real-time events, like if somebody asks for a mortgage, we can inject it into a CRM system for mortgages. If somebody wasn't answered, we can take a message and then trigger an event for them to call back. Some people want this data in real time. Some people want it the next day in a report. Now, macro data is trends. So we measure what is happening across a broad swathe of data. So we look at, you know, hundreds of thousands of calls, figure out if your answer rate's going up or down, if your booking rates are going up or down, if your customer sentiment is going up or down, and then try and figure out what you can do about it. And in terms of how we capture the data, again, focusing on calls, we have basic phone calls, so we can track who called who, when, how many calls they've had, length of call, was it answered. This we've been doing for over 15 years. The second one, which is an increasing part of our business, is actually tracking what happens during a call based on the actual media waves. So if you don't record a call, so if you're not recording a call, we actually track what happened. So we can detect sentiment baselines and spikes and things like that. And this is increasingly interesting in countries where they're reticent to record calls. They don't really want to get into the privacy side of things. So we can track this, and we're building more and more models to analyze these calls and training them on our third sort of bucket, which is calls which we record, we transcribe. This is where we get the deepest amount of information, but this also helps us to train that second bucket. So this is where we actually know exactly what happened. We know the outcome of the call. We know also what other places this individual is called because we can check their history of transactions throughout bands. So I'm going to go through data. Somebody said earlier, AI is easy, data is hard. That's music to our ears because we're all about data. So we use our data to analyze businesses all the time. And this is just a snapshot of, we've analyzed hundreds of thousands of calls in the real estate sector. And this is just a snapshot of data across multiple customers. So it's aggregate. So we start with all these people, as you can see. And then one of the first things we brought out was sentiment is shocking. 18.8% of people are happy. That's not good, right? You're spending a hell of a lot of money to get somebody to call up, and less than a fifth of them end up as a happy customer. This is bad, not just for the real estate brand, but for the portal brand. You'd be amazed at how many people phone up and they say, oh, this property portal sucks. No one answers the phone. They don't really understand that it's nothing to do with the portal. It's to do with the agent. This happens all the time. So the brand of the portal is damaged just as much as the agent. Next data point is, this is larger in other industries, but quite small in real estate. Only 3% of calls, I'm going to take these off now. because it's talking to me. So only 3% of calls come out of hours. So that's not as much as you'd think. But one of the interesting things there is about 50% of those happen within an hour of closing. So you could easily have somebody work an extra hour and then you could half that number. Next up, this is also shocking. 47% of calls are answered by a live agent. So you've got somebody who's come to the portal, they've searched through your inventory, they've picked the house that they want, they've picked up the phone, they phoned them, and nobody answers the phone. This is absolutely shocking. This, again, is during business hours, 97% of the time, people still are not answering the phone. And the first thing people complain about when they call, 5% of people, which again is 5% of the overall number, so that is 10% of the people who get through, they complain that nobody called them back. They were waiting for a call back, they didn't get it, they left a message. Bob was supposed to call them back, Jenny, whoever. They're not getting a call back. That always starts a great conversation. And this is an interesting one as well because we work with a lot of real estate agents and they tell us that their agents are trained, they're all doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And we find that 8.7% of details are captured by agents. Now, that doesn't mean that that goes into the CRM system. That means they know who called. That means they asked for the name. They got the email address, the phone number. We don't know how many of them actually end up in a CRM system, but that means over 90% of people who call, you don't even know who they were. You can't call them back. Similar stat here, viewings booked by agent. 7.1% viewings are booked by agent. Again, that could be doubled if they just answered the phone. Next one, we are told that we have one agency who's telling us that 100% of their staff ask if the person needs a mortgage. That is not the case. That agency in particular had 13%, which is higher than normal, but we see 6.1% of mortgage discussed. That's not a broker appointment booked. That's just a mortgage discussed. And considering the value of those leads, that's pretty shocking. Next up, we're told that the most valuable leads is a seller lead, but less than 1% of agents ask if you have a property to sell. Now, if you have a property to sell, you are incredibly valuable because it's a double whammy. You're phoning to buy a property, you're probably selling one as well. They don't even ask, less than 1%. That is just a fortune left on the table. So, what happens to the calls that aren't answered? So 12% actually just hang up, whether they're on hold for too long, whether they just get into an IVR system, which they hate, whatever happens, they don't go to voicemail, they just hang up. 41% actually go to voicemail, which doesn't sound too bad until you realize that only 9% actually leave a voicemail message because, believe it or not, they don't think anyone's going to call them back because they're not. So we have this issue where people go to a voicemail, they don't leave a message. They don't trust the old voicemail systems, etc. So that leaves you with 44% of lost leads. That is leads where the only thing you have is the phone number that called you sometimes. Sometimes you don't even have that. You don't know who it was. You don't know what they wanted. You have no visibility on 44% of your leads. The amount of money that is spent to get these people to call you and you're not even aware of who they are. And we looked at branch variability. We've done this in a bunch of different segments. This means, how certain branches compare to others. So in real estate, we see an answer rate of 21 to 75%. That means some branches are answering the phone 1 in 5 times. Some are answering them a lot. We have companies we deal with that have over 100 branches that have lost money for a decade. They try and figure out, why is this? What's happening? And we can actually tell them, well, no one's answering the phone for starters, but then we can dig deeper and say, when they do answer the phone, this is why they're not booking viewings. They're either not answering the phone professionally, perhaps they're understaffed, perhaps they're undertrained, perhaps they're undermanaged. But we can dig into that information, and we do this a lot with different companies. And we work in real estate, we work in automotive, we work in vets and healthcare, and this number is always a big driver for improvement. So how can we help? Well, the first thing is we identify the problems. So we can actually do capacity gap analysis. We can supplement humans with AI agents. We can do all kinds of things to try and improve things, including suggested training. But the biggest thing, again, is figuring out what is going on. If you don't know what the problem is, you actually can address it. We had random keyword spotting on one of our accounts, and it was a medical place. And the underperforming branches, the keyword Amazon kept coming up. And we found out that people were answering the phone and saying, oh, you can buy that on Amazon. You don't need to come in here. Obviously not great for that business. And if you estimate leads, this is always a difficult one to do. So I always underestimate the value of a lead, put it $100 because it's just simple maths. But I think everybody in this room knows it's a lot higher than that. But if you base that off just 10,000 calls, and we have one customer who has 192,000 voicemails a month, about 90% are for bookings or viewings within the next 3 days, and they check that voicemail once a week. So about 80% of those are completely beyond their sell by date. But here's some maths, but you can do your own maths on this, honestly. What we do to actually fix this problem from an automation standpoint is we actually replace voicemail with an interactive AI agent. Everybody hates voicemail. This is a little bit more friendly. We've seen about triple the amount of people leaving a message if you have something interactive, so that when they phone up, they can actually speak to something which can give them some information. And there's a novelty factor. There's some people who don't want to speak to any robot, so they'll just say, no, just leave a message. But either way, you end up with tripling the amount. And again, coming back to the 44% of lost leads, that's a big number. The other thing we do is replace IVRs. We have one customer who has 11 stages in IVR. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, whatever. We can replace that with a conversational AI so that it actually has a conversation. Hi, how can I help you? Sorry, no one's available right now, but let me get your details so that we can get back to you. We're increasingly seeing customers asking us to power agents to call the people back because they don't have the staff to do that. We've also seen some businesses who will take calls if they go to the IVR, and then they will cherry pick the most important ones that go to the agent, and then send that to a call center. So we're not really replacing humans. We're replacing dumb machines with smart machines. That's kind of one of our biggest things is voicemail is decades old. IVRs are ancient. So we're replacing those and then actually enhancing the behavior of the humans by filtering out the garbage. Another one is staffing. So honestly, again, this is kind of crazy, but 50% of those out of hours calls are within 1 hour of closing. Just hire somebody to stay an hour later. So we do our agents, IO agents, obviously. That's because we're iovox. We call everything IO something. That's what we do is we allow them to handle leads 24/7. Some people put this right up front because they want this to actually qualify leads before a human gets involved. Some people put it afterwards if no human answers the call. We don't really care. It depends on during hours, after hours. But these agents, you can train them, you can build them on our platform, you can make them take over calls, you can add them to a call flow so they only address certain calls. For example, in the hospitality space, we have restaurant booking services. And if you want to book a table, it will go to an agent. Or if you have frequently asked questions, it will go to an agent. But if you want to speak to somebody, it goes to a person. That means that person is way more likely to answer the calls that they need to answer. So one of the important things for us as well, not everybody uses our agents. Obviously, some of our customers use some of the big platforms out there, which we are very happy to integrate with. We see this as a feedback loop. So we see the data, which drives the behavior. You don't replace a human with a robot and then assume that that robot is going to be fantastic and address every problem. So what we actually do is we use the data to analyze where this robot is falling down, where it's failing, and then we can change that. We have in automotive, we had a customer who 30% of their leads were actually for services. They did not do service. So we explained to them, yes, you do. You just don't monetize it. There's a lot of things that happen through a business that you are not aware of. Some of them are small, some of them are large. But we'll get the sentiment analysis out of these calls to agents, and then we can use this data to feed back into the agents to actually get them smarter. So that is pretty much all I have to talk about. And just in summary, I've heard a lot of people talking about AI, and obviously this is the buzzword. I think people are mistaken that it is the same speed as the internet. AI is going to go so fast. It is going to change everything that we do. We're seeing it day after day, and it changes after a month. If we use Claude Code, that forced everybody in our business to adopt AI. It is incredible how it changes from 1 month to the next, much less 2 years, 5 years. We're looking at cycles of time which no longer exist. I would say either evolve or die. That's my motto. Thank you.
Ryan, thanks for that. Let's start with where you just finished. Implement, you said you're pushing through ALA within the organization. What are the key use cases for AI within iVox that are creating value? Doesn't have to be from the outside, it could be internal as well.
Yeah. So we use it for quality control, testing, test-driven development, documentation of code, uh, gap analysis. So, for example, we can see how many API requests come in for certain functions compared to others. So, large data analysis, we use it. We train our own models because one of the things we have is a vast amount of data, so that we can actually use those models to actually look at chunks of data. PI redaction's an interesting one. We use that sometimes to enhance leads. In the US, there's no such thing as privacy. So they want to know who called, what they said during the call, what their name was. In the EU, a lot of people want to redact that. So we do the opposite. We remove that from the recording, from the transcription, etc. But internally, we use it for pretty much everything. We're trying to change more and more how people behave because we're trying to explain to people that your job's not going to be taken by AI. Your job is going to be taken by somebody who uses AI. And we faced a lot of resistance, especially from developers, where like that person's not a developer, they can't code. Yes, they can do. But also with iteration for products. So we used to do wireframes, then we iterate on those. Now we go straight to here's what it looks like, here's how it works. It's interactive. In that meeting, you can change it. You can say, well, I don't want that. I want that to be over there. And actually, when you click that, it should do this. 3 minutes later, the whole page is rewritten. So it's just made that product cycle so much faster for us.
Okay, so it's internal efficiencies at Stripe. It's helping have better analysis of calls and the conversations. You shouldn't call them calls, conversations that you're interpreting for people. I've got that.
And interesting things like spam blocking. We do a lot of spam blocking. And now what we're able to do is build models which track spamming conversations. So you can have a phone call and we can go, wait a second, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
So we'll actually then flag that call. We can send an SMS to either party and say, hey, don't call this person back. Don't follow through with that.
Okay. So now you produce a lot of data. So one thing is we talked about the importance of data with AI so that the models can learn, they've got and the more proprietary data. There's two types. Well, I guess there's my data as a customer of yours that I've got and everyone else who's like me. Is that siloed or is it blended?
It's siloed. So it's siloed by country, by industry, by customer. So we have to be very careful with different countries' regulations as well. We work in, I don't know how many countries now, but 40, say. Every country is very different. So we have to be very careful about where we store, how we process, what we do. And then there's customer contracts, of course, as well. And then there's their contracts with their customers and their, you know,
Right.
policy.
So then when I'm thinking if I'm a customer of yours and data is important to me and I want to enhance my my internal learnings, as part of which I can see is I can get all these call transcripts or at least the information related to that
Yeah.
sent into my systems. I can build engines around the outside for customer training or customer service training and so on. Plus also then enhance, I guess out of that, I can also then start to feed into my product roadmaps.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. We're seeing a lot of companies do this with off the shelf, large scale LLMs as well. And one of the things a lot of customers are asking for is, give me the transcriptions, but I want it all redacted because they're terrified, and they should be, about putting this data into a public model.
Yeah.
So we have our own models. We host them ourselves. We have a whole bunch of very nice big machines. But we're seeing a lot of customers saying, like, I want to know this specific thing. And again, like in vet tech, it's huge as well. Just every little different aspect. Some of the stuff is obvious, so you can look at things and say, okay, we know this happens. But when you do like unstructured learning, you find some really interesting things which you just did not expect.
Okay. Let's do this top question. Humans like talking to humans. What service activities can be taken over by AI agents without losing this personal relationship?
Voicemail. Humans love talking to humans, but 50% of them can't speak to one. So that's why we always talk about replacing stupid machines with smart machines, not necessarily replacing humans with humans. I think you're always going to need a human touch. But I think that they should be curtailed so that we block out the spam, we block out the noise. If you're just looking to book a table, that's fine. Just talk to a robot. If you want something special, like you're having a party, there's going to be 80 people, you want to speak to a human. If you're looking to rent an apartment, there's already 400 people applied to that apartment, you don't need to speak to a human. So it's basically like taking a razor and cutting out all of the things because the fact is the humans don't have enough time. So they should be focused on the most valuable things to the business and also the most sensitive things to the customers.
Which makes a lot of sense. Let's do one more question. Do you see an increase in AI generated inquiries? So AI is talking to AI.
Not yet, but it's going to come for sure. And how do you block that out? Or how will you block it? How will you know it's AI talking to AI? Yeah, good question. Do you want to block it out? Sometimes people have private personal AIs which they're using to actually book a table or do whatever. So you have to be very careful doing a blanket ban on things like that because you're going to actually annoy customers. But I mean, there's the robo dialing thing, of course, where there's, AIs which are going on mass. Those are easier because you can spot patterns. So you can say, this is the same conversation that happened 10 times the past minute. Block that completely. Yeah. But if it's something which is a little bit more intelligent, it's harder to obviously sort of pinpoint that and act on it. And some of that is real time SMSs we do. So about 30% of the SMSs we receive across our networks are blocked. Very obvious, you can see the text, you don't have to analyze it. So you can do it before it gets sent to a person. But in voice communications, that's way harder. Ryan, thanks very much. Love what you guys are doing. Thank you. Congratulations. And I hope this has worked.